I'm very honoured and excited to be welcoming Charles Vogl, an international best-selling author, into the podcast today. Charles is the author of, many of you may well have read this book, The Art of Community, which has become very much I guess you could call it state-of-the-art reflection on the community building aspirations that many of us have. He's since followed that up with other books around the same kind of similar topic, and then we're going to be exploring hopefully some of the general kind of principles around building community and the importance of feeling as though you belong, both professionally and I guess personally as well. And for a lot of people, this is quite a poignant topic. So welcome to the podcast, Charles.
I'm glad to be invited, Neil.
Yeah, and in the kind of the run up to this, we were having a brief little conversation about some of the kind of sort of angles that I guess people are looking at on this whole concept of belonging and community and feeling part of something. And one of the things that I guess I was interested to explore, maybe we begin with this, is this kind of, I guess, feeling that I'm certainly picking up in a whole range of different sizes and styles of organization at the moment, that people are feeling a little bit disconnected, that maybe the world feels a little bit disjointed, and chaos, I think, is a word that I'm hearing bandied around quite freely at the moment. And I guess it's been like this for quite some time. Are you kind of seeing it with the work that you're doing, this kind of feeling of disconnection and people looking for I guess well-being through sort of human connection? Is this something that you're seeing as well?
Yes, and I'm seeing that a number of ways. I mean, there's my own experience of just knowing how much the people around me where I live and connected to my church and my son's school want more connection. But there's also the statistics we see of how not good outcomes in our culture is happening when we look at mental health, when we look at, unfortunately, suicide rates, and we look at, for example, just reports of isolation. But let me tell you, it doesn't really matter what I'm experiencing. The research is overwhelmingly clear. Since at least the 1970s in the United States, I don't know how different the UK is, although I'm going to assume it's somewhat different. We've seen a slide of more isolation and loneliness in a generation that seems almost unbelievable, quite frankly. And to give you a sense of scale, Bob Putnam out of Harvard in the 1990s published a book called Bowling Alone, which was written as a warning to let Americans know that our social fabric was falling apart and we weren't as connected as we used to be. And the book title referred to the fact that we're even bowling alone. And for example, the statistics show that we're even having picnics less together. Well, after that book was published, we had the pandemic. And he's now recently released work saying that that book was meant to be a warning, and things have gotten much, much worse. And to also let you know how this is no longer just a subtle thing in the United States. Vivek Murthy is our Surgeon General, and in 2017, he published an article that was the front page of Harvard Business Review, right? Not a social science magazine, not a mental health magazine. And that article was meant to alert all business leaders that the loneliness epidemic is such a crisis. It's important that all business leaders are aware of that and take heed. Since that article in 2017, he published an entire book on the loneliness crisis. And then, of course, we had the pandemic. And this year, his office has spent much time announcing the loneliness epidemic, the #1 priority for his office. So it's not a matter that you and I just feel that something's amiss. We are in legit crisis as far as people being disconnected. I'll give you one statistic just to anchor that in recent times. The latest research shows that, at least in the United States, half of Americans have less than 4 friends. It's actually 3 friends or less, with 1 out of 6 American men reporting they have no friends.
This, I would say, I mean, you made reference to the UK there. I would say we reflect that very much here as well. I think this feels like it's a Western civilization kind of thing that kind of
Mhm.
stretches across all various communities, all
Yeah.
various kind of populations, and certainly, with the very narrow kind of field, relatively, of view that I have, I would
Mhm.
say, yeah, I'm seeing this, through many people, and the work that I'm doing, supporting marketers and entrepreneurs and businesses
Mhm.
of all sizes here in the UK and across Europe, is that there is this kind of feeling that very much reflects that. And it feels like a certain kind of irony, really, where we have this so-called social media, which we've obviously had for a couple of decades now, which is meant to have been a process whereby we can connect more freely, more openly. But it feels like everything has gone in the opposite direction. I'm not here to
Yeah.
knock social media. It's been a big, part of the fabric of my professional career for the last 2 decades. And I just feel that there's a really interesting irony. It's almost like a dichotomy here that,
Yeah.
we have access to so many more people, and yet we're shutting off. We're not feeling connected. We're feeling, as you
Mhm.
say, as a community, isolated. And I wonder
Mhm.
why that is. Do you have a sense of, this kind of digital connection as being something very, very, well, fundamentally different to
Yeah.
real face-to-face human connection? Because it
Yeah,
feels that
digital
way,
mediated
doesn't it?
communication is far less satisfying than in person. And my understanding is the research is clear about that. Um, so there's two things to mention there. One is the research shows that having more followers on social media, however you want to use that noun, followers or friends or connections, does not appreciably make our lives better. Whereas a single digit number of friends in your immediate area radically improves the quality of your life. And so you can imagine if you're investing your energy and time into a place that doesn't improve your life and you're not investing where it would radically improve it, after 10 years, you're going to get results consistent with that. We also know that, for example, when in video calls, it takes, if I remember correctly, 5 times the amount of video time on a call to create the same level of connection we create when we're in person. And it's worse than that because, Neil, I can invite you to share dinner with me and we might sit down for 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock on a Friday and you wouldn't think anything of it, right? Maybe you want to come back. But if I asked you to sit down and have a video call with me from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock on a Friday, you'd probably laugh out loud. So we want to spend less time on video and it takes many more times the hours to create the same relationship. Well, we just play that out over 10 years and we're going to have less connection.
I wonder where we're going to be going with this. I mean, I know you've obviously been, fascinated by this as a topic, and I want to go into the backstory as to kind of how that emerged for you personally, in a little while. But it'd be a very interesting kind of, this is almost, I guess, a rhetorical question to see how
Mhm.
this really plays out, because we have emerging new technologies, Web3 with the metaverse coming, obviously a lot of AI technology coming in here to potentially free up space and time to allow us to
Mhm.
connect more, because it will take away some of the mundane. It'll be very interesting to see how, if we've fundamentally got it wrong with social media
Mhm.
in the traditional sense of social networking, whether or not these more kind of virtual communities building online in a more kind of 3D sense, which I know we've had with the likes of Second Life for many, many years, but the new technologies emerging are more photorealistic. It feels like your digital twin sitting down for dinner, as you say, with my digital twin, feels a little bit more realistic than maybe we've had in the past. I mean, do you have a sense that this is still almost not enough, and it is that very much face-to-face, human-to-human, that is the solution here? Does your kind of work point in that sort of direction?
Well, a lot of people have flamed out predicting the future. So I'm not going to predict what our response is going to be to technologies that we haven't seen. But we can look at the trends. The more that we're spending time on social media, the more isolated and happy we are. People have been sitting down and literally sharing bread for thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years. Um, and we are more lonely now than probably ever in human history, probably because we just have the technology to be this lonely. We haven't even touched on the fact that we know that loneliness is correlated with adoption of extremist views. And we're seeing around the world, certainly the United States, what used to be fringe ideas and fringe views now mainstream. And I don't think it's an accident that we're seeing these rise as our isolation and loneliness accelerates a great deal. So I'm not convinced these technologies are going to address that. And what we need to remember is that these spaces that we're meeting online are also hosted by people who have aspirations that are far more and far different than us just meeting and creating friendships. Right? Inevitably, the time that we're spending there is being sold to somebody else. And most places you go, Neil, you don't want to sit down with me or anybody else in the context where somebody who's in control of that experience is selling your attention to somebody else. Full stop. You just don't want to be there. In fact, you'd probably pay to leave that place. And right now, that's the construction we have in these digital spaces, largely.
Mm. So when you kind of think back, I guess in some ways, pre this situation that we're in now, and maybe before, maybe well before the Arta community and kind of pulling that together as your first book in what is almost like a trilogy of kind of communication, really, in lots of ways. What would you have said really were some of the key drivers that moved you into this space? Because clearly it's something very, very close to your heart, something that you feel as well as kind of think about. What were some of those early kind of themes and drivers that pulled you towards the idea of community?
Yeah, well, since my early 20s, I've been very active in things that someone might call, with a very broad brush, activism. I worked on homelessness issues by volunteering full-time in a homeless shelter in Southern California. I served in the U.S. Peace Corps in Sub-Saharan Africa during the AIDS epidemic, working on healthcare issues and some human rights stuff. I was a genocide filmmaker for PBS for many years, where I told stories of genocide survivors and in an effort to unlock stories of healing, stories that would heal. And then in New York, I organized largely immigrant restaurant workers who were being abused by restaurant owners. And those are all very different activities, but the through line there is, to be effective, I had to learn how to bring people together around shared values and purpose without depending on transactional relationships. Because in all the activities I just shared with you, we never had the budget to say, well, we need something done. Let's go find someone who'll take money to get that thing done. So those were the many years where I was building up the muscles and the understanding how to relate to people in ways that, while the work may not be fun, cleaning a kitchen for a homeless shelter or going to a courthouse for immigrants suing employers, people do it if they're with others who share their values and purpose, and we can make a difference. And then I went to graduate school to study religion, philosophy, and ethics. And one of the great privileges of studying religion is studying organizations, people who have stayed together around values and purpose for very often more than 1,000 years. And I remember being moved as I was reading about these traditions that were very, very old, knowing that I could leave that classroom that very minute and I could go and find people who are still gathering in those traditions and using those rituals. And that was very moving. So what? So when I finished graduate school, I didn't know what to do in the world, and I followed my wife to California. And here I had a religion degree at this point and a lot of experience doing the things I just mentioned, but I didn't want to do that anymore. And I had lunch with a guy named Kevin. And at the time, Kevin had fairly recently started a company called Twitch. And they had tens of millions of users, which sounded like a lot, but Kevin thought they would have many, many more. And for those of you who don't know, Twitch has now 250 million members, and it's the largest online video streaming platform in the world. This is my understanding. At the time, there were only 50 million users. Kevin and I were having a lunch, and he said to me, we have millions of users, and I know we're going to grow, he said. But what I want to get better at is connecting the people who are already on our platform. And he didn't say that because he thought I would fix it. He was just sharing about the challenges he was taking on. Well, when he said that, my head almost exploded with all these ideas I wanted to share with him, because I had just spent more than a decade using these tools, understanding these principles, and it became clear that Kevin, while he knew how to build a global tech company, didn't know these things. So I went home to write what I thought was going to be 10 pages and put it on the internet, and maybe Kevin would use it to be helpful as he grew his company. But as I was writing, it turned out I had more to say. It turned out it was book length, and then the first publisher that saw the book published it. And then when that came out, it turns out that it wasn't just Kevin that was successful at something, but there was this one part, or at least this one part, that they wanted to get good at that would help their organization, either for their internal people, or in Kevin's case, customers, or in other cases, associations. They're looking for members or bring people together who share a profession. And so that's why the book has had now meaningful success.
Do you feel it was the I guess the point when you identified that shared purpose was such an important, I guess, binding or bonding sort of element within community, that everything changed? Because it feels that when you say about breaking bread for thousands of years and that religions have been built upon this, clearly religions have a shared purpose. There is this one kind of core focal point that everybody can identify with, and they can say, yep, this is part of me. This is where I want to direct myself, where I want to point my life. It gives me that sense of, I guess, knowing where I fit. So purpose for you, it's always a very interesting word, isn't it? Because I think it has so many different meanings for lots of different people. When you say purpose, how would you kind of define it? Probably more eloquently than I've just done.
Well, you mentioned so many things there, maybe unwittingly. So first of all, I don't agree with you that that's how people relate to religion. I don't think it's clear when people come together that they all agree and they know what they want to do or should do. And I don't think it's always clear that they belong in any given religious community. And I think it would be ridiculous to expect any religious community to achieve that kind of homogeneity in any given day, much less over a year. Which is to say that there's a lot of work to be done in religious communities so that people who show up and visit, or people who've been there a long time, remember how it used to happen, still understand the value of creating experiences together that create understanding and care among people. It would be very easy if everybody showed up the first day and said, I know I'm supposed to be here. I know we all agree what we're supposed to do, and we all know that we belong here. And that's just never how it happens. So I define community in a very specific way in my work. And in my work, a community is a group of people who share mutual concern for one another. Full stop. That's it. And you may have a group of people who like bicycling, maybe bicycling in London, God bless ya. But often when people brag about a bicycling community like that, they often are just talking about a list of people who bike in London. Maybe a list of people who showed up at a particular event. That's called a guest list. Nothing wrong with those things. But until we make other investments, that is a group of people who now have mutual concern for one another. They're just the people who attended a bike event, right? So when we define it that way, then we get to look at, well, who are we bringing together such that when we do so, they will care about one another. And Neil, if you're in a room and you don't perceive you share any values with them, and you have no purpose in life that you share with them, I don't think you're coming back. Now, it might be good enough that their values are, I want people in England to be safe. And I think any family that goes grocery shopping should be confident they're not going to get beaten or shot. Like, that might be enough. And you might go into rooms with a lot of people from England, and that's the only value you share. But if that's what you share and you're going to work on it, that's good enough, right? And then when you say what purpose, in my work, we say that every community needs to help members grow in some way they want to be. And I say be because I don't know how diverse the activities could be. I'll give you an example because I cook, Neil. So I cook. So if you invite me to an event where I learn how to sharpen knives, both European and Asian, for cooking, I might be interested in that. If you invite me to an event where you teach me how to assess stone fruit for correct ripeness, I might be interested in that. If you invite me to a lecture on the Maillard reaction, when baking, I might be interested in that. Those are radically different activities: knife sharpening, fruit assessing, and chemistry. But if all of those things are helping me be a better cook, they all fit. Which is to say, it's not really important what you do, Neil, as long as your participants understand that it's helping them be who they want to be. Now, let's pretend you go to that event with 500 other people, and your shared value is we want people in England to be safe in the grocery shop and everything else. And the purpose of this is to help families that right now don't feel safe for good reason to feel more safe. There is probably a whole ton of activities that we can invite you to that will help you grow and to be a citizen more vigilant and keeping other people in England safe.
So I'm feeling the way you're describing this then, that there's two tiers. I think I and quite a lot of other people, maybe people listening to this, muddle up the two concepts of purpose and values. And I think the way you've just described it there is that these are almost at different levels or different tiers of understanding. So the values being kind of the shared, I guess, expectations of outcome, but purpose being, and I love this idea of it being about enabling a state of being in the future, that if we come together, we can co-create, cohabit, collaborate to create a sense of being and ideally well-being. And as long as those shared values are maintained underneath that, this feels that it's a little bit of a hierarchy of attention, isn't it, really? It's like, okay, let's just make sure our values are shared. So we're kind of meeting here with the right similar-minded people, so like-minded souls, for example. And then on top of that, can we then collaborate and work together to create that sense of shared purpose? Is that kind of how this works?
Well, I don't want to overcomplicate it. We use these words so that I can share these ideas. But at the end of the day, people just really want to get together with others that they perceive share their values and purpose. And I don't know where you live, Neil, but you would probably be happy to have 3 friends in your neighborhood that you could watch your favorite TV series with twice a month. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Okay. So fulfilling your purpose of being a neighbor would simply mean going to events where you make friends. Let's not overthink it. And anywhere where you can make friends, which could include walking around your neighborhood, walking a dog, buying tea, like that counts because you would make friends in your neighborhood. You'd find out who likes your favorite TV series, right? And maybe has TV, I don't know. So we can get really in the nitty gritty if we're talking about complicated communities that really mature with different levels and different levels of seniority, but we don't have to. The first question when we want to bring people together is, well, what is the shared value? And we just need one. More is better. One is enough. I want to have friends in my neighborhood is enough.
So in a personal sense, I totally understand that. I'm wondering from a professional sense, and again, question for you is in your work, and I know you do a lot of guidance and advice for sort of executives and leadership teams and commercial scenarios. Do you find that within that type of environment, it is more complicated? Because certainly what I see is that people aren't necessarily all pulling in the same direction, for example, or somebody might have a sense that, well, our purpose is this, and then other people might have a slightly different definition of it, and it almost like over the years we've had vision and mission and all these kind of statements that are kind of a little bit lukewarm or a little bit sort of insipid, and they don't really sort of count for anything. But it feels that purpose can be so much more strong. It can be that thing that really does bind us together. So professionally, do you see that?
So you're right. People like to make it complicated. It doesn't have to be. One of the mistakes I see happening in the corporate world when someone says they want to bring their people together, whoever those people are, is they unwittingly want to do that with a strictly extractive and, if I can be frank, sociopathic mandate. We want to bring people together so we can extract from them more. Right. Well, Neil, I don't know how busy you're going to be the next year, but I already know how many events you want to go to when the person inviting you and hosting simply wants to extract more from you. And they're doing that with a sociopathic relationship with you, which is to say they're not expressing or really have concern of your well-being. Right. And I don't think people do this maliciously. I think they do it because they think, well, our organization, our corporation wants to make money, and the only reason we're going to, buy pizza or burgers or rent a room is because we're going to extract more. Fine, but Neil already knows how many times he wants to come. With some irony, Neil, the research is also clear. If there's a silver bullet for turnover, engagement, absenteeism, and accidents at work, it's having a friend at work. And when many people at work have a number of friends, we call that a community. And one of the advantages of having people in community or having multiple friends at work is an informal communication network is there when the formal communication network fails. And that's one reason why accidents go down. Because if I'm trying to call legal or I'm trying to call shipping and I don't know what I'm supposed to do by 5 o'clock, I'm either going to guess and then blame it on somebody else because I didn't get the information, or I'm going to call somebody I know in those departments who will pick up because they're my friend. And they'll say, absolutely, Charles, do not put on the right side of the warehouse because we have an explosion. And I say, oh, good. I didn't realize that. Now, I never write down, I almost blew up the warehouse because I put propane tanks near oxygen tanks and didn't know how to seal them correctly. I'm never going to write that down and say, because I have a friend in that department, we saved it. But that makes a huge difference when you have people who can call people for help. And when I have friends at work, when I'm not sure what to do, I can call friends without fear of looking bad because friends are going to help me. And so what I found in my work, there's a very specific type of organization that reaches out to me. They're in high stakes challenges, which is really code for people die if they get it wrong. They're in highly dynamic circumstances, which is to say the manual from 2018 no longer applies. And they depend on highly skilled people to work together. And so that's why the people who reach out to me are largely in medicine, education, military, and certain levels of high innovation tech. Because in all those industries, if they get it wrong, people die. And the people who are working on it have to be able to work together. And you better not be running a hospital, an education institution, high-tech innovation, or the military like it's 2018.
So how do you kind of begin that narrative then? Because as you say, keeping it very, very simple, I guess for all of us is the mantra, isn't it? Is what we want to be doing because we can understand it, we can share the goal, we can share the progress we're going to make towards being a better community, a better team, better organization. But it's going to get complex. It's going to get complicated, isn't it? Because as soon as you start to add in different disciplines, you get different perspectives, different levels of experience, you get different levels of, I guess, self-perceived wisdom or not. Once you add in the human, doesn't it just naturally get more complex?
There are complications that show up, Neil, but we don't need to assume things are getting very complex. Neil, what field would you say you're in? I know you do many things.
So I guess my sort of core element is helping. Well, it's marketing, so it's helping organizations to understand and communicate effectively within, but also then with customer. That's ultimately what I do.
And when you wake up in the morning, what are the kinds of people you wish most you could help?
Those would be people who need hand-holding, again, trying to cut through the noise. So they've tried 1,000
what are these people
things.
Taking on in life?
They're taking on way too much. So they're time poor. They're just trying too much. So they're trying to get more. Sweating the assets is a phrase that
Neil,
we use here.
You told me they're doing a lot. I still don't know what they're doing.
What are they physically doing?
Yeah. What are they taking on?
So they're arguing. They are. Yeah, they're not communicating clearly.
What are they trying to create in the world such that they're arguing, not communicating clearly, and doing too much?
So they're not realizing that what they should be returning is value, and they're trying to, I'll use the word, sell product or service.
So you wake up in the morning and you wish that day you could help at least 10 people offer their value in the world in ways they're not able to get it out.
Yes.
Okay, so if you run an experiment, your life will change radically. If you just make or buy soup, split pea counts, and you schedule every Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30, you could stretch, go to 9:30. Every Thursday between now and next November. And all you do is invite people who wake up in the morning and are struggling to offer the value they want because they're too busy arguing and overwhelming themselves. And you share soup with them for 2 hours every Thursday, whoever comes, and a year from now, your life will be radically different. And guess what? So will theirs. Is there more we can talk about community? Absolutely. I've written 3 books. But if you just do that, your life will look unrecognizable from a year from now. And what's also going to happen is at least 2 of those people are going to say to you, Neil, I need to let you know that time we spent together radically changed my life in this way. I'm so thankful you make split pea soup every Thursday.
And so all we need to find then, if you're really preaching this as a practical exercise that people can do, and I think you are, just the passionate way you described it, is that all we need to do is just literally make that time to give to others. Is it as simple as that?
Neil, the starting is as simple as that. And if you end there, you're going to radically change your life and theirs. So Neil, how many times in the last year did somebody who genuinely want you to be better at what you want to be better at invite you to sit down for 2 hours in a I want to say extractive, in a non-transactional aspiration and a non-evaluative way? How many times in the last year, so since November of 2022, did someone invite you to sit down for 2 hours and just share that time?
The 2 hours, no.
No. So you're telling me 0 people in the last year?
In a lengthy kind of transaction like that, I'm in a very privileged position that as part of the teaching that I do have a number of people who I mentor. It's a significant number of people that I mentor. And eventually in a lot of those relationships, we go to those kinds of conversations, not with everyone, because obviously there needs to be a natural human fit, but with those that I do, eventually there can be those kinds of conversations. It's not as significant amount of time though. So the amount of time I get with these people is not, say, 2 hours every single week or something like that.
Right.
But
well, I'm not.
So is there a time that is necessary to be able to achieve this?
The importance isn't that somebody shows up every week for a year. The point is that if they come to 1/3 of them over a year, because sitting down with you is fun and or it's rich, that relationship's going to radically change. And they're going to say things to you that are going to change you. And they're coming back because there's something there that's helping them grow. That's why the people come back. That's why you come back, right? But notice you get so few invitations that if you're the person inviting, notice how extraordinary that makes you to be the person who says, look, all I promise is there's going to be a chair and split pea soup from 6:30 to 8:30 on Thursday. I would love for you to come because I thought of you, because I know you're trying to do this thing. And certainly I'd like to be helpful if I can. And if we don't talk about that either, then that's good too.
So with this,
full disclosure, Neil, and I schedule 2 dinners a week. And sometimes they get supplanted by kid stuff. But the point is I don't schedule 12 a year or 20 or 24 a year. I schedule over 100 a year. And maybe 20 of them get supplanted by weddings and baptisms. Who knows? But the point is that means at the end of the year, the number of times I've sat down with somebody I want to know better and they want to know me better. How do I know? They showed up. Is extraordinary. And over 10 years, I'm surrounded by people who love me and I care about them. We stay in contact. And no matter what happens in life, with one phone call, somebody's going to show up and help. Because we have all of these relationships that have been reinforced over years. And I wish that for everyone.
This feels like it's a reciprocal thing. It really does. It feels like if one person starts doing this, be me or somebody else, it's almost like the people then who are on the receiving end of that patience, that active listening, that great high value offer. It feels like it's almost a moral obligation that they start doing it with people they're connected with as well, so that it has that ripple effect. Is that the ultimate?
We wish it were so. That's not been my experience. We know that people have very different relationships with how much they want to invite, how much they're comfortable around other people. There are people who are be comfortable sharing a meal with me and maybe me and 4 other people on a particular evening, but they're not comfortable inviting others to their home or anywhere else. But that's not important. The important part is you can notice, Neil, that for the out-of-pocket of split pea soup, we'll throw in some sourdough bread. You could radically change your lives and others and create the relationships that would, quite frankly, be powerful the rest of your life.
So people who typically might feel they are responsible for taking the lead on that, certainly from my experience, tend to be
Mhm.
people in positions of seniority, be it personally or certainly professionally.
Mhm.
This feels though it's something that anybody could embrace. I mean, there's almost like you're giving everybody permission to do this. You don't need to have experience, do you really? Because if you're kind of actively
Well,
listening,
I
it's
mean, if
about
you spill
being
soup,
a
you better have a rag
facilitator,
there
isn't
to
it?
if you spill the soup, you best to have a rag to wipe it up. Sure. Yeah. I mean, experience helps.
But it's
I
not necessarily a prerequisite here, though, is it really? Because as long as you're actively listening, anybody could sit and listen and contribute, couldn't they?
Right. And it may not go smoothly in the beginning, who knows? But my point is like, this is how low the bar is. This is by far not the end of it. But when you say does it have to be complicated? Doesn't it get complicated? No. If you don't want it to be. Now we have to recognize that there are power dynamics and cultural differences in different places that um, influence who we can invite to soup and sit down with soup. I mean, there are places in this world where if I invite some men's wives to have soup with me, that creates a real problem. And I need to understand that. And in some places, I just have to invite the husband and the wife. Fair enough. In some places, I can't invite the wife. My point is, there are other things that we need to understand that are about power dynamics and cultures. But we live in our cultures, so I'm not going to pretend that I need to handhold everybody on that. I better not go to my son's school and invite a bunch of 10-year-old girls to have dinner with me. Although that would be fine as long as I invite their parents, right? And so I got to know that. And by the way, I think that's appropriate that I need to invite their parents. My point is, it's not so simple as saying that just invite anybody and anybody doesn't like it, doesn't understand. But parents of 10-year-olds like soup. It's not rocket science. Most are not going to come because they're busy. Maybe some are not going to come because they don't like me. Fair enough. But I don't need lots of people. One is enough.
And that's the
And
point, isn't it? It's those little pebbles dropped into the water that then ripple because people then start to understand, that from just purely the invitation, not necessarily the actual participation, but from the invitation, great things can happen because this is very intention driven, isn't it? This is so positive and, it might produce negative and challenging stuff within the conversation, but the intention here is just so good, isn't it?
it can be good. And if I invite somebody over, I want them to have an experience that enriches their lives. And the reason I invited them is I believe that if they come, it's possible my life is enriched. And if I don't believe that, they shouldn't come because who wants to come to that guy's living room? Right? So Neil, this is a genuine invitation. I'm going to give you a genuine invitation. Neil, on just about every Friday night, my wife and I take time, starting at 6:30, to sit down with people we want to know better, friends we already have, to build the friendships that make our lives rich and also make us powerful as a family to handle the challenges that we face. I'd love for you to join us on Friday when you're in the area.
That's wonderful. That's a really kind invitation. Thank you,
I
Charles.
didn't even tell
That's
you what we're eating. There's no entertainment.
wow. But it's the conversation that is the entertainment. It's that
And maybe it'll be
eyeball
terrible. You don't
contact,
know.
isn't it? But that doesn't matter, does it? From what you're
Can you
saying,
imagine if
it
I,
really doesn't.
said that to 5 people a week, not even one a day? And what if 4
Mm,
out of 5 a week said, "No, I'm never coming to your house, Charles. I don't even eat dinner. I can't even believe you would think I would eat dinner with you." Let's pretend that happens. If I found 5 new people each week, and I don't need to, but if I did, at the end of the year, I will sit down with 52 people for a long meal over hot food with no other agenda than to create friends. In a world where only half of Americans have 4 friends or more, having 20 friends that you can call because you share meals together is a radical life change.
mm. And I can just see how this would so play out as well in a business sense because of that connection,
Yep.
that feeling of,
Yep.
I have a professional friend here who I can call upon. They may be less or more experienced than me. It doesn't matter. It's a sounding board. It's somebody who I can trust and is there when I need them. That must be such a great feeling. Was that kind of one of the key sort of reasons for the books, for your thinking, for the work that you do. What is the key driver for Charles from this point? Where are you kind of really
Our
headed
era
with
needs
this?
healing, Neil. To get really sober in the United States, our higher education cannot spend mental health care monies fast enough to keep up with the mental health care needs of our young people who got into college. I won't even start talking about statistics about our war fighters who've been fighting a war for over a generation in the United States and how they and their families are carrying all the burden. We need to be more connected and to support each other in ways that is almost unthinkable in contemporary America. And if my work knits together any level of support that helps families be more resilient, stronger, and more healthy, then this is worth it. And guess what? People work at work, and companies suffer. I mean, it's public that I've worked with Google for many years. You know, Google is aware they're a global company. People are all over the world, and the world is changing quickly. They are really aware that they need critical people to be connected in ways that matter and support one another and have access to each other. They just need it. They can't not have it. And it's not an accident that they reach out to me. Now, I don't know if there are other business leaders that are way smarter than Google and think that's silly investment. But if the U.S. Army and Google thinks it's pretty important, I hope that leaders of smaller organizations recognize the critical importance of investing in this.
And if they wish to then find out more, I mean, we have to point them in the direction of your books, which go far deeper than we can over a 40-minute conversation, our first 40-minute conversation, Charles, I hasten to add. And yeah, just kind of really connect with you. Is it charlesvogl.com? Is that the place?
Yeah,
charlesvogl.com.
And you can just search me on the internet. And my books are sold where books are sold, so they're fairly easy to find.
That's wonderful. Charles, this has been a challenging, fascinating, thought-inspiring conversation. And I can certainly appreciate that people who do get the invitation to connect with you clearly get this in heaps, absolutely in heaps. It's been a real pleasure today. Thank you so much for your time.
I'm delighted to share this experience with you and be invited to reach your audience.